Hello and welcome to the Minds on the Frontline Podcast, brought to you by the Wayne State University Frontline Strong Together 5 Program. I'm Geoff Lassers, one of the hosts of the Minds on the Frontline Podcast, and I've been a professional firefighter, paramedic, educator, and content creator for over 19 years. Minds on the Frontline is co-hosted by Mike Mattern, who is also a professional firefighter and paramedic with over 17 years experience. In addition, Mike is a peer support team member for his department and the Frontline Strong Together 5 program, as well as the chair of the Michigan Professional Firefighters Union Behavioral Health Committee and a board member of the Michigan Crisis Response Association. Bottom line, Mike has training and experience with frontline worker mental and behavioral health. On the other hand, I do not. My role is to produce the show, whereas Mike is our resident subject matter expert. Together, we hope to inform, educate, and entertain first responders, their families, and the public regarding the realities of frontline work-related mental health challenges. In this episode, we welcome back Manisha Leary, who is the manager of the FST5 Program, as well as a trained psychotherapist with a focus on trauma. During this episode, Mike and Manisha will describe the intent, purpose, and functions of frontline peer support teams. They'll also describe how first responders can access a team for help. Finally, Mike and Manisha will discuss the process to start and maintain a frontline peer support team. This turned out to be a great episode that clearly and concisely covers the role of peer support teams for frontline workers. Enjoy the show. Well, hey guys.
Hey, what's up, man?
Hey.
Oh, just another day, another podcast with my friends here. So everybody knows who you guys are. And today we're going to be talking about peer support teams.
Yeah.
Really specifically frontline peer support teams, because peer support teams are making their way into really every profession. And that's a great thing. But Mike, I Googled what a frontline peer support team is. Here's what I got. A group comprised primarily of trained individuals who share a common profession or background as first responders. The main aim of this team is to provide support to their colleagues who have experienced traumatic events, who are facing stressors related to their demanding line of work or their personal lives. Now, that's a fancy definition. I think it really sums it up. But give us the Mike definition in your own words. What is a frontline peer support team?
Frontline peer support team is a group of individuals like you talked about. They're your peers. They're the ones who are going out on runs. They're the ones that you work with that have taken upon themselves to go get some training to learn how to talk to their peers about situations, whether it be on the job or off the job, and really kind of help them navigate that whole series of, well, what do I do? Is this normal for me to feel this way? And really to try to help them and get them to clinicians or, even just sitting down and having a conversation with them. That alone could make a difference. It's being the peer. It's kind of doing what we're already doing. On the job, we all take care of each other no matter what. And, when we're out on a run, everybody's going to do whatever they do to take care of each other. It's really that same thing once you come back off that run, or you're back at the station, or you're back in your own life. That's what peer support is.
So is a peer supporter, Manisha, somebody who's just supportive of their peers, or is this something that you have to learn how to do, like a certification level?
So when we're talking about frontline peer support teams, there's some things that you got to do to kind of be able to understand how to support your peers in a way that's healthy, right? Because people can support, like our best friends, our girlfriends, they'll come out and support, and we'll have a day that the next day I'm not feeling that well. So that's still support, right? When we're talking about frontline supports, we want to make sure that it's happening in a way that's mindful of the mental health, well-being of the person that's reaching out for the help, or the department as a whole. So being able to make sure that your peer is trained with supporting in a way that not only provides in the moment help, but also longevity. So that person or that team knows how to reach out if they need something else in the future.
So that's a really good overview, guys. But Mike, what are some of the things that a peer support team does?
Well, number one, what they do is they maintain the confidentiality of whoever they're talking to. A lot of times people don't want to talk at work because they think it's going to get out. They think it's going to get around the department, around the company, wherever it may be. So number one, we really try to maintain, and we 100% maintain that confidentiality when you come to us. We bring emotional, psychological support, not only to our employees, but also their families. It may be something as simple as you got a sick kid at home and they're looking for support that way. It's not always those traumatic runs or, the PTSD or whatever it may be. We all live lives outside of that. So what we do with peer support is really try to encompass all of that wellness for that employee and their families.
So in that regard, you're just giving them a place to go if they need to vent it, talk about it, or figure something out.
Place to go, but also we have shared experiences.
Yeah.
You know, my son was born with a cleft lip and palate, and we went through a lot of medical stuff early on in his life. If you have somebody that you're talking to that maybe they don't necessarily have the cleft lip and palate, but they have a kid who's in the ICU, he was in the ICU a couple times as a baby. So it doesn't necessarily even have to have that training. It's that life experience to go, hey, listen, I know how it is to spend a week in the NICU down at Children's. You know, talk to me about that. And then it kind of gives him that support, like, okay, somebody else gets what I'm going through. One of the other things that we do is critical incident stress management. We do that through debriefings and diffusings. And that's actually a small part of what we really actually do as a peer team. Those are kind of the few and far between. But after traumatic runs, we'll go out, once you get your training, and we'll go out and we'll talk to crews after traumatic runs that happen, whether it be, you know, a kid death or whatever triggered something to them where they go, yeah, we need some help. And what that really does is help them kind of process through that call, help them talk about the run, and really kind of off-gas that stuff so that we're not holding it in like we have for many years.
Right. And that's for those big ticket items that really could have a sentinel event impact on us, right?
Absolutely.
But what you're saying is your SISM skills and actually doing that debriefing and diffusing with people that are in those situations isn't that common as probably just helping people with normal life stuff.
That's the bread and butter of peer support, is the normal life stuff.
It's kind of like our moms
Yes.
probably think every time we go to work we're in fires every day.
Yeah.
In all reality, the day-to-day operations of fire service is not as glamorous and romantic, right?
No.
Most of it
No,
is
it's not like
day-to-day.
Chicago Fire.
Not even a little bit.
Not even close. That's one of the smaller portions, but I mean, they're big events. You know, I mean, those are the ones that are going to cause an impact. Mm-hmm. Luckily, they don't happen necessarily with the amount, but we do still do those.
So the peer support teams is a place to go for your everyday stuff, and then they're also trained for debriefings and diffusings for the bad days.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. And with that, kind of coupled with that, is we also help provide resources and referrals to clinicians. Some teams are big enough where they have their own clinicians and they can send them to their own clinicians. Other teams may not necessarily have those types of resources, which that's kind of where Frontline Strong comes in. Is there's a whole list of resources that even if your team doesn't specifically have them, you can go to FST5.org or you can call the number and you can go, hey, I need a clinician for such and such. And you can really look it up. Big portion of what peer support is, a lot of the time we're just getting phone calls going, hey, I kind of need to talk to somebody, but I don't know who to talk to. And do you guys have a number for somebody I can talk to? Yeah, sure, we'll get you set up. And they don't necessarily want to tell everybody that they're going to get help or they're going to get, you know, somebody, they want to go talk to somebody, but they'll go through the peer support team and go, hey, who do you guys have?
Yeah, it's much more intimidating just to Google therapists in my area, figure that out, than it is to go to a buddy at work or a peer and say, yo, I'm experiencing this and I want to talk to somebody. I don't really want to talk to you about it, but I want to talk to somebody. Great. Let me get you to that person.
Absolutely. And they know the people that we're sending them to have been vetted. They're culturally competent in working with first responders. Because, you know, on the flip side, I've been there. I've been where you're looking at therapists and you're like, I don't know who to talk to. Right. They all, on paper, they all look good.
Yeah.
You know, and they trust the fact that we put the time in, we vetted them, and we're getting it to where, okay, we're going to send you to somebody that's good. The next thing that we really try to do is promote mental health and resiliency. The biggest thing that's stopping people from getting help is the stigma that's attached to all of this.
The stigma's tough, especially with our frontline workers that we work with. They kind of get the impression that they can't ask for help because they are the people to provide the help. So it's hard to get the people who are providing most helps to our community, right? They come in, you guys come in, put the fire out, save the day. Police officers come in like with bad guys, and you know our EMS save people, and our corrections and officers keep our jails and prisons safe, and then our dispatchers start it all, right? Mm-hmm. They get people to where they need to be, and so it's a process. Everyone has a specific job that they go out and do, and our goal is to help them do it well. Well, I think in the minds of most of our first responders, they don't need help doing that. They're trained by their departments to do that, and then that's it. They figure the rest of it out on their own, and they don't need any help to do that. The reality is that if you want to make it to your 25 and out, you're going to need more than just the training the department gives you. And that's where peer support teams and mental wellness and resiliency all comes into play, because it's a lot to get from day one of your job to the last day and to live throughout retirement. That is becoming the biggest barrier, is just making it to retirement and living throughout retirement. And so we want to arm people with the tools that they need without having to expose yourself to anyone else or tell the world that you're using these resources.
You know, one of the things you just brought up was promoting mental health and resiliency. Mm-hmm. How do peer support teams do that?
I think it's just by going out there and talking about it, talking about mental health.
So it's that simple. It's just sitting down and talking.
It is. And it's also it's sitting down and talking. It's talking about mental health in general, but sometimes it's talking about the stuff that you went through. All of the first responders are built on passing on information and knowledge. That's how the fire service has been built, the police service. Everybody has been built on passing down knowledge throughout the years. They'll pass down how to throw a ladder, or the best way to attack a fire, or the best way to deal with a chest pain, or how to arrest somebody perfectly. But they don't pass down the landmines that they necessarily stepped on when it comes to mental health and those types of things. So building that resiliency is saying, okay, I had this situation. This is how I dealt with it. Wasn't the best way of dealing with it, but when I dealt with it this way, that helped me deal with it. So now you're teaching them how to be resilient. It's those types of things that really helps promote the resiliency and kind of just promote mental health. Like the fact that you can go, yeah, I had an issue, that's promoting it right there.
Right.
That's bringing it out into the light and talking about it.
Yeah. I think promoting resiliency also attaches with making peer support a culture. All of the 5 disciplines have their own culture, that they buy into. They live, breathe, eat it, do the whole thing, right? And so that's what we want peer support to be, is a part of the culture. We want resiliency and having different coping tools to be a part of the culture. So we want it to become second nature. And that's the number one thing that we need to do to reduce stigma, is to let our first responders know that they're not alone. So platforms like ours, like doing podcasts, webinars, all these different things, we're just basically telling people that you are not the first to go through this, nor will you be the last. And probably at any given time, someone is feeling exactly how you're feeling. So we want this to be a part of the culture.
Absolutely.
So do peer supporters just get trained and they're done, or do they keep up their training? Do these groups meet and keep up their skills? Because I got to imagine being a peer supporter changes over time. There's things to learn. You can, your group members increase, decrease. So how do they kind of maintain that?
Well, it's continuing education. I can only speak for our team, but I've talked to a lot of teams around the state. We do quarterly trainings. We meet up, talk about the team, and then we do mock diffusings, mock debriefings, mock post-suicide interventions. That's just the quarterly training. When we see a training that might be something that's going to enhance our team, then we can bring out that training or go to that training and do it that way. I think it's like anything else in any of the services. If you stop learning, you become stagnant. When it comes to this stuff, there's nothing that everybody's going to know. Nobody knows every single piece of information. So if you think that, then you're also going to become stagnant, and you're also probably not going to be a good team. You have to know that you don't know it all, because it's so new. And so if you pick up a training, whether it be good or bad, you can pick something from all of these different trainings. So we try to find those trainings that are particular to peer support, mental health. Some have been good, some haven't been as good, but the fact that we're doing it and continually training, that's the biggest thing. It's no different than if you're at work. If you're going in between calls and you don't do something very often, you're going to lose those skills.
Do you think that the peer support teams are becoming analogous to our special response teams, to our high-angle rescue teams, to our hazmat teams, to our SWAT teams if you're a police officer? It's almost like this skill you have to hone separate from your primary duties. So is it becoming more like that?
Absolutely. And I think, to be honest with you, the peer support teams are getting called out more than the hazmat teams and the high-angle rescue teams and the special operations teams. And I know a lot of places, put a lot of time, effort, money into those types of teams, which I'm not saying they should be. But you have to start looking at these peer support teams on the same level as those teams and giving them the same support that those teams get.
We're not saying to add things for the sake of adding things. We're recognizing a need. We're recognizing these teams actually work when you actually appropriately fund and give them all the right stuff. So why not make a team?
That's the thing is, like we've always said before, we'll put a lot of money into nice fire trucks, or to use your special operations analogy, the best ropes, the best harnesses, the best SWAT team gear, whatever it might be. But in the end, the greatest resource is what uses those ropes, those trucks, that SWAT team gear, and that's the people. So if you take care of the people, that's going to pay off a lot more than the nice equipment that you bought. So you got to take care of the people who are using it.
I've seen some amazing things happen with people given very little resources, but given a lot of support. Whether that is, we're cheering you on, we need you to do this for the team. They'll figure it out on a shoestring budget with no materials.
Absolutely.
If they care enough.
100%. And a lot of these peer support teams are starting their teams and running their teams on a $0 budget.
It's amazing.
Yeah. What separates peer support teams from those like hazmat teams and SWAT and special operations is that once they're trained in their state certified team, they are covered, their confidentiality is covered under the 444 law, meaning that you can talk to anyone on your peer support team and that is confidential. What is said, what is stated doesn't go past that person, doesn't go past that team. So that's not going back to your boss. That's not going back to the administration. That's not going through any reports that anyone has to see. That's just between you and that peer support person. That's what makes it so kind of like golden in this sense, because we are built on trust. We're built on harnessing the ability of being able to allow someone to be vulnerable in a setting where they're completely safe. I think that's what makes us more unique and gives us the ability to help someone so that they can go and help someone else.
You know, one of the things we've talked a lot about what peer teams are, but one thing I kind of want to hit on is what peer teams aren't, or maybe a misconception about what peer teams are. And I didn't really know they were out there until I started kind of talking to some clinicians, and they came up and started talking to us. And it's not just clinicians, but I think it's overall. Some people think we're a replacement for EAP, which we're not. Mm-hmm. Okay. Some people think we're a replacement for clinicians, therapists. We're not. Some people think that we're trying to be clinicians and therapists. Trust me, we're not. Those are some of the kind of the misconceptions I've seen, that like, oh, well, you guys are just trying to come in here and fix people's problems. No. I mean, we are, but we personally, if it's something small, like I gave the example of your kids in the hospital, I can talk to you about that. It probably will help.
Yeah, sometimes just talking. Like,
just talking about
it,
right?
I just needed that. Thank you.
But we also realize we know where our lane ends.
Yeah.
And really our job is to talk to you about it, see if we can help you. And we realize very quickly, if we can't help, then we need to turn it over to the clinicians.
It's kind of like being a paramedic.
It is.
Mm-hmm. You go on the call, somebody called you, you show up. Depending on what's going on, you might sign them off. You might take them to a hospital for further help and the continuation of care. I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's almost like another person who's trained to triage the magnitude of the situation this person is getting with, and then triaging it further into what resources they need.
Exactly.
It's like literally what we do in the field.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
makes sense.
absolutely.
We'd be good at peer support then.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's really what it is. But I think sometimes, you know, and I think when it was a lot newer, there was a lot more misconceptions. Because
like you're saying, people are like, well, I guess they're having all the therapists here now. It's like, no. We're training our own people to prevent problems and provide outlets to off-gas these things and or find solutions and or find greater help for them.
Right.
That's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So in that same vein, Manisha, from your perspective as somebody who deals with peer support teams, but you're also a trauma therapist as well. So you know both sides very well at this point.
Yeah.
You're doing it long enough.
Mm-hmm.
So help people clarify the role of the clinician for a peer support team and how you're, for the most part, probably mostly hands off.
That's actually one of the best questions that a peer support person on a team can get, because I think the idea of being a clinician, you think that people think automatically, okay, so this person that's on your peer support team is going to try to like shrink my brain or like try to like get in and do all of those things. And it's not that at all. What a clinician on a peer support team does is just offer support, and we pick up where a lot of our members have to hand off, right? So if it's a space where, Mike may be like, listen, I can get you to who you need to talk to, and I can have somebody come out to you. That's really what the clinician on the peer support team does. And even in that space, I'm not actually like doing therapy. I'm just providing you a space where you can have confidentiality. You can talk to someone that's even separate from the team a little bit. And then also I can real time triage what it is that you need. So whether that's talking to me long term, whether that's talking to a doctor, or just getting you in a support group, anything that you may need, I can triage that in real time. And there's no barrier into you getting that next step.
And it might be a good situation for these people that a Mike might not be able to see the nuance of what something's really afflicting somebody, whereas Absolutely. You might be able to literally diagnose a situation.
Absolutely.
So the peer supporter can identify there is a problem and then kick into the next highest level, which may be the clinician or whatever set up for them. Mm-hmm. So it's really like an umbrella, so they have something to go to.
Yeah.
We're always able to scale up that call for service, if you will.
Absolutely. And I think the beauty about being a clinician that's on a peer support team is, especially a culturally competent one, is that you know your team. You know the work that they're doing, and it gives me the space to be able to say, listen, like, you're not going to be able to BS me through this. Like, this is what's happening, and this is kind of what you need to do. So you can either accept it or you don't. But as the team, we're going to always support you through it. So whether you say all the things that you're telling me right now, I don't want to do any of that, I'm always going to follow up with, okay, I'll call you tomorrow. I'll call you in a week. I'm going to check on you there, so that support is enmeshed
rather than
into
that person leaning on their avoidance and maybe bad coping skills.
Absolutely.
Right. And that's the point.
Yeah.
And that's where, in another episode, we heard from Scott Taylor talk about the fact that you're going to decrease your sick calls. You're going to decrease your problem children, your disciplinary things through these mechanisms, because a lot of times people are manifesting attitudes that aren't the attitude. Mm-hmm. Anger is from sadness sometimes, or maybe avoidance completely going to work.
Yeah. Avoidance, fear, right? Shame, regret, all of these things are at the base of what comes out. And most times it manifests as anger for first responders, or frustration, or just isolation, withdrawing from what you do, not talking to people, those kind of things. But I think it's hard for people to kind of understand what's the real thing that's happening. And as a clinician that's on a team, I have a little bit of that kind of edge to be able to say, it's something more going on here.
Right.
And me having that one-on-one conversation with you is always going to be received better than me having that conversation with you in a room full of 10 people.
Right.
Yeah, right? Where everyone's kind of hearing your thing. You're never going to give me the real you. But one-on-one in a space where you know that it's safe. Nothing else is going beyond this. I think it gives me an edge to be able to get you in the right direction.
And if the team was established the right way, and it's got the right situation, and it provides confidentiality, it does the resilience over time, I'm walking into the room with trust.
Exactly.
Making your job easier to help that person.
Yeah. So that's eventually what we want. We don't want to have to, we'll chase you if we need to, right?
Sure.
We want you to know that you're supported.
Exactly. Right.
But ideally, we want people to, we want it to be so second nature that members of the department will just come and say, hey, you got a minute? Can I talk to you about this? This happened a couple weeks ago.
If I see somebody doing something without a safety device on at a high angle, I'm going to say something. And they go, oh, yeah, we should probably do something about that. Yeah. We're trying to turn that same look. One of the primary things we really want to talk about today is starting and maintaining that team. But before we do, I want to hit one more thing real quick. Talk about the fact that peer supporters are trained to be peer supporters. And one of the things they're trained to do is critical incident stress management, CISM. Mm-hmm. How do they work together, those types of trainings for peer support teams?
CISM is well known throughout the first responder community. People know about CISM teams. They kind of know about the bigger incidences. Like, for instance, Michigan State or Oxford, we had a lot of CISM teams deploy. And so what that means is these are teams that are created to go out specifically for these larger kind of traumatic events that first responders in the community. So that's a big part of this. First responders in the community have some kind of fallout from this event, right? So the most common misconception is that if you have a CISM team, you have a peer team. And honestly, that's not true. That's not true at all. So you can have an outstanding CISM team that deploys for these bigger incidents, and they kind of are great at wrapping around managing a bigger incident. So triaging people to where they need to go, wrapping around someone to get them in the right space and the right resources, following up a few days or a few weeks after the event. That's pretty much what a CISM team does. That's the whole part of a debriefing and a defusing, right? A peer support team are the people who can also do that if they're trained in CISM, but they are also the people that are going to help you through not even just the literal things, but the bigger things as they're going. So the difference that I like to say between a peer support and a CISM team is your peer support team will be able to recognize the signs of you building up to something affecting you on a larger scale. They'll be able to say, you're shying away a little bit. I see you not sleeping as much. You're not taking some time off. I called you. You're not returning my phone calls back. This big incident happens. This person blows up on a scene. Your peer support team and the members on your team are going to be able to see that long term versus a CISM team coming in and not knowing what has affected you beforehand, and them just seeing what happened on the scene, right?
Yeah, so one's like a chronic thing that could afflict people.
Exactly.
And peer support's here to help you with the resiliency and the chronic long-term health.
Exactly.
Whereas a CISM team is designed as that acute right now,
yes,
let's go.
The acute right now in the moment. We're going to wrap around. We're going to get you through this. And a little bit of follow-up after that, but the whole idea of it is to get you through this moment.
Well, thank you very much for that, Manisha. That's a very good, compare and contrast to the two. And that's number one. Even when I was becoming more familiar with peer support team, I was almost using them interchangeably.
Oh, yeah.
Shame on me, right? Mm-hmm. So now that we have a little bit better idea of all the details of what they do, what they do not at a peer support team, Mike, how do you start and maintain a first responder peer support team?
That's a great question. And it's probably one of the biggest questions that I get phone calls about and Frontline gets questions about. The first step is just, okay, we want to start a team. Whether that starts with the rank and file or down below or the chief at the top, number one thing is, all right, let's do this. We need this. We see a need for it. The support may or may not be there, but we're going to do this. We want to do it. The number one thing that I can't stress enough, if you're going to start a team, is to have the right people on the team. You don't want the people who are the gossips in the department. You don't want the people that nobody trusts. You don't want the people who are just doing this to put a feather in their cap. Mm-hmm. And in your little area, you probably know who they are. And so you want to be very selective on who you get for your team. You could have a phenomenal team with all the best training, all the best whatever, but if the people on it aren't there for the right reasons and the people who they want to talk to don't trust them, your team will never be used. I've seen it in one or two places where they're like, well, we're not sure why people aren't calling us. But you go out and you talk to the people in the stations and out on the road, and they're like, well, yeah, because they got people that nobody trusts. That's why we're not calling them.
Right.
So that's number one. You got to find the right people.
Sometimes you need to convince those people to get involved.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that, become the classic guy or girl at their occupation that people go to, right? And it's like, well, we better get Larry. Larry's really good with people.
Well, and I think partially sometimes people are afraid. They're afraid to step up and be on, the peer team because they think they're going to be made fun of. I know when we started our team, we thought we're probably going to be laughed out of this place because mental health wasn't there, And obviously now it's more accepted and we didn't realize how much people actually wanted to use it. But if you find the right people and those people buy in to your peer support, like their hook, line, sinker, there's nothing that your team can't do. It's one of those things where the people make or break it. Now, along with that, you got to have, number one, Manisha touched on it earlier, is the confidentiality. That kind of goes hand in hand with the people that are on there. You have to have the people that your members will trust that nothing will be said. Mm-hmm. You can bolster that. We have a confidentiality agreement. I know a lot of teams sign confidentiality agreements. When you become a team, you sign up, you become an accredited Michigan State team. You get protections from Michigan House Bill 444. And that takes you all the way up. They can't subpoena your stuff even. Yeah. That's how much confidentiality that buys you. And we let people know that. So having the right people and confidentiality are really number one and number two, and they kind of go hand in hand together.
Right.
Because if you don't have the people that'll maintain it, nobody's ever going to use it.
Go 1A, 1B.
Yes. I mean,
you got to have confidential team members. That's probably number one. Let's just put it all into one.
Yes. Yes. So that's the first part is finding the people.
Okay.
I can't stress that enough. Now, the next thing is to build that trust with your team. Go out to the people that you're going to service and lay all your cards out on the table. Like, listen, this is what we do. This is what we have. This is how we're going to do it. There's nothing hidden.
Make your intentions clear.
Yes.
We don't like being bullshitted.
No. And with that being said, people know you're bullshitting them.
Yeah.
So we'll show up and lay our cards out on the table and go, this is how we do it. This is what we do. This is our confidentiality. Some teams do tracking. So they track their contacts and those types of things. They'll actually go out and show them what they're tracking. So there's no identifiable, like if you and I were to talk, there's nothing to say that you and I talked, but there is a record that we talked. I mean, you go out and even show them that. So there's no questions. Because with first responders, if you leave a blank space, they're going to fill it with something.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
We will decide all the potential variables and come
Yes.
up with a near weird conspiracy theory as to
Yes.
why that thing exists.
Well, I heard from, and they're like, well, who'd you hear that from?
They.
A guy.
Yeah, the proverbial they come
Yeah,
out.
they. Okay,
Yeah.
well, give me names of who's they.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that you have to build that trust early on, especially when you're starting that team and you're going out there. Go out to all the members and say, hey, listen, this is what we got. This is, the protections, all that stuff. That helps build the trust. But also what builds the trust is time. When a lot of these teams start off, their first one or two that they do, people don't necessarily trust them right away.
Well, a lot of people might think it might shake out and be over in 6 months. So you almost like want to see that it's for real. It's going to be around more than 6 months. I want to make sure the people shake that tree, knock off all the ones that don't really want to be there. And man, there's nothing in the emergency services world that shows that you're real by somebody who sticks it out over time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And they experience it, and it's like anything in all the first responder communities. It's like a giant game of telephone.
Mm-hmm.
If there's something that's bad, it spreads like wildfire.
Mm-hmm.
But if they have a good experience, then it starts to spread as well. So you'll kind of get a trickle right off the bat, like one or two people might use you, but once they realize, like, holy shit, I talked to that guy, no one ever knew that I talked to him, then they're going to tell their friend, well, if you got a problem, you should probably call him.
I find that those people also silence the naysayers who know nothing about stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like, no, that's not true. I've seen this, and they do that.
And it's not until
Right.
they experience it.
Right.
We've had people who were,
Exactly.
maybe necessarily the detractors, oh, look, here comes the hugging team and, all this stuff. But then when they experience what we actually have to offer and what we do, they're the people who are now standing up, like you're talking
And
about,
giving hugs.
and going, no, but they're standing up and going, actually, this stuff's pretty good. You should probably use it.
Mm-hmm.
When 6 months earlier, they were the ones who were kind of making fun of it.
Right.
And
As hardcore as we can be on each other and get on each other like that, once we realize something actually works, we will get in your corner.
yes, but it takes time, and it's building that trust.
But the good news is on that is once you got us in your corner, good luck getting us out.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's the benefit of the long-term game with first responders is once you got their trust, man, they got you back.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to maintain it.
Yes.
It takes a long time to earn it, and it takes 2 seconds to lose it.
Oh, man.
And that's where you have to really be very diligent at confidentiality and building that trust, because as much as I do, you just hit on it. It takes a lot for us to build trust with something.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So you put in a lot of work to do it. The second you lose it, you're probably never getting it back.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where, especially in the first responder community, it takes a long time to build it. You have to maintain it.
So it's really hard to have confidential, strong team members and people around and available and willing.
Yeah.
Right. That's the hard part.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also, once you get them, there's an ask. Right.
Yep.
They got to be trained. What's the ask? What kind of initial and ongoing training are you asking somebody who could be a peer supporter to do?
What we're trying to standardize it in the state. We're trying to standardize what a peer team is in the state based on the training. Because up until now, you can call yourself a peer team,
Right.
and you may only have peer support training, and you don't have CISM training. Or
It's like saying an ALS and a BLS
Yes.
ambulance
Yes.
are the same.
so what we're really trying to do is standardize. So if you pick up the phone, it's like 911. You get the same service wherever you are. You get the same.
Somebody shows up.
Yes.
Right.
But we want you having the same training. So initially, peer support training, whether it be law enforcement has their own peer support training. The IAFF does the IAFF peer support training. And then at the bare minimum, it's the peer support training and the critical incident stress management. It's called GRIN training, which is groups and individuals in crisis training. Those are the bare minimum.
So GRIN training gives you CISM training.
That is CISM training. It's one and the same.
Okay.
The CISM training, it's called GRIN training.
And so what am I in for at this point? Between my peer support training and my CISM training? I mean, honestly, if you got a family but you want to help, you know, you got to recruit these people. So what is that ask?
So the peer support training is 2 days or 3 days, I believe. And depending on what CISM training you take, that's only another 2 or 3 days.
But I mean, that's certainly a roadblock for really busy people. But at the end of the day, we're not talking like a 6 month to a year basic EMT or paramedic course.
No.
Or law enforcement training.
Yeah.
We're talking about a pretty short term thing for the initial. What about that ongoing? What are you in for on that?
Like we talked about, the ongoing quarterly trainings.
And it's really on your department, really?
Yeah, I mean, it
Quarterly's
varies.
probably recommended.
It varies from team to team what they do. But normally it's quarterly trainings, a couple hours quarterly. So every couple months, maybe a couple hours of continuing training. Along with the initial training, you know, the other thing that we hear a lot is, well, we can't afford to do it. What the nice part in the state of Michigan, the peer support trainings are actually covered by smoke funds in the state for fire. And they're also covered for the police as well. You can find grants and through FST5 to get those trainings. So right there, your peer support training just costs you nothing.
So although that may be a roadblock, it's certainly a surmountable one with some assistance right now.
Yes. And the CISM training, you can get free through Frontline Strong. So your initial trainings, if you want to start a team, will cost you $0.
At least for signing up and taking it. Now, obviously, there might be some time coverage cost by a department or whatever else, but it's certainly a minimized. It's not say, hey, it's a $10,000 class and I'd like overtime.
Yes.
But that's what it was when we all started, because there wasn't necessarily Frontline Strong that was around that could help pay for these trainings. So we had to pay for them out of training budgets.
Right.
Beg, borrow, and steal trainings. I mean, like...
And training budget's been tough for the last decade.
Absolutely. But it's actually
and for
easier
smaller
now.
departments, it's hard to even...
Yes.
Some of them don't even have a training budget because you have to put funds other places. So
You have departments with 5 people in them.
Yeah.
That's where you go get into a regional team. You know, so now you're looking at... We're trying to put together 6 or 7 departments to get everybody trained, and this person's only got this much money in this budget, and, you know...
It's like you're speaking back to you better have support at the beginning.
Yes.
Not just financial, but like, you know, there's going to be a lot of moving pieces to get up and running. This is something I could see once it's really set up. And I work for a department with a peer support team that I know who to call. It's streamlined. It's easy. Not every department has that.
No.
So I could imagine it's really the logistics up front. That's the big cost. And then going from there, you know, obviously the big hill of going uphill and earning trust with your people and all that. But the network of it doesn't seem that hard once it's there.
Yeah.
The hard part seems like getting off the dime and pulling the trigger.
Yes.
Pun not intended.
I was just going to say, probably not the best.
No, that was awful.
Anyways.
But no, it's the reality. It is. It's just starting it up and kind of working through all of the barriers, because in our mind we build them up, and in our departments so you're going to have a million people tell you why you shouldn't have one, why you can't have one, why right now is not a good time. But you just need to find 1 or 2 reasons why it is and try to make it happen. And we can help you do that.
Okay, so that's the logistical ask. What about the emotional ask? There's got to be a lot of self-care for these people, because vicarious trauma is a real thing. I might have the perfect life, but the more I'm around stories of people going through stresses, that's going to impact me. So that's another ask. What are you asking these people to do to perform self-care?
That's awesome. So our peer supporters have to not only be mindful of taking care of themselves, the work they do, their families, but they have to practice that every single day. So self-care looks like any different thing, but it's healthy items that are a part of your coping toolbox, right? So exercising every day, getting those endorphins up, being able to release stress and doing those type of things.
Practicing what we preach, maybe?
Practicing what you preach in that space. Meditation, yoga. Real men do yoga. So
I love yoga.
I think it's,
As a guy with a fused spine, I can tell you yoga works.
Yes, yoga works. And it works for pain. It works for nerve pain, back pain, all these other places, the wear and tear that your body goes through from doing the work that you do. You can definitely work those out without taking like a plethora of medications and doing those other things. Talking to people, having an outlet when you actually have a rough day, having a space where someone can say, hey, you doing good? Do you want to talk about it? If you don't, okay, let's do something to get your mind off of it. Kind of having that support. Mike, I heard this from you initially, is that you guys see the worst parts of people's lives a million times a day. you compartmentalize it and you get into a space where you're like, okay, that's just my job. That's what I'm here to do. But that's heavy. That's really, really heavy. So it is important to have some space where you separate yourself from the work that you do. It can't go all day. You can't be firefighter, police officer, EMS, corrections, dispatch all day, every day. You have to be something else. You have to be your most genuine self. You have to be the person who you were as a child. You have to have fun and be authentic to who you are and not make sure that this job is all that you are. So I think that is the key thing that we offer for helping support our peer support teams.
Wow. So we're not only asking these people to be confidential, trained, trusting members, we're asking them to go above and beyond to take on other people's stresses and then be able to shed their own plus theirs.
Absolutely.
That's all.
I mean, listen, the reality is...
But it's possible. It's doable.
Yeah, it's
I got
doable.
one right here. He's doing a great job of it.
It's possible. It's possible. You can do it. And the reality is all of us want... I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to do this forever. So
I don't want to do anything forever.
I don't want to do this forever. I want to be able to do something well, pass the torch on to the next people to be able to do it, and then enjoy my life afterwards.
Right, your next thing.
Exactly.
Motivates you, and that's the point, right? And that's kind of what we're trying to help people learn is like when you say, don't adopt your personality for too long of who you are, your identity, really.
Yeah.
Is allow it to flow.
Allow it to flow. Absolutely.
You know, be 10 things.
Yeah, I know I'm good at being a trauma therapist, but it also in my mind, I can be the next Beyonce. So
that's cool too. Or you just might like hanging out and having fun too.
Exactly. So there's other things that you got to kind of remind yourself to do. I realistically know, most likely I'm not going to be the next Beyonce at my age. However,
you never know.
It's things like that, like
AI's
going
coming.
to concerts and having fun and singing in and around the house when I'm cleaning up. Like those are the things that like make you quirky and make you who you are. You don't want to lose those parts of your personality because you're so focused on what this job has done to you, what you feel like this job means to you. You start to lose those aspects of your personality and those characteristics of your personality, and that's hard. Those are the things that lead to divorce and separations and having estranged relationships with your families and your friends. All of that leads to losing really who you are. And that's what we are trying to prevent.
One thing I want to touch on with talking about self-care with peer support, we go see a clinician twice a year, no matter what. And I'm talking to all the people who think they want to do peer support or who are doing peer support. You won't realize how much it fills your backpack. We go out and we tell people to talk about it. When you go out and talk about it, it makes it better. It makes it easier. What people don't necessarily realize, and I didn't realize it until I started getting into peer support, was when we talk about the confidentiality, the stuff that you talk to me about, I can't talk to other people about. So it's one of those things where you're carrying a lot of people's stuff that you may not necessarily be able to talk about with other people. And you got to realize that, and it will weigh on you. I mean, you get into some of these suicides, some of the stories that people tell you that they're going on in their life. I can't stress it enough. And that when you start your team, have a plan for self-care, because you are taking on so many people's, like you talked about. I may go to a 24-hour shift, work 24 hours, have 2 bad runs. And then I get off work, I get a phone call about something. I'm now putting that in my backpack on top of it.
Right.
We try to rotate how many people do calls, because you can't have everybody doing every call because you're filling up their backpack. And like I said, the confidentiality thing, it's great, but you also, who do I talk to about it?
Yeah, you got to offload that somewhere.
You got to offload it somewhere, but you can't necessarily talk about it. I mean, so that's
certainly not open with anybody, but does that allow the opportunity for you to talk to your clinician from your peer support team or another peer to offload?
You can, but there'll never be anything identifying.
Right. My point is, you have a place to put that pressure.
You do have a place to put it if you have that place set up.
You don't have to eat it because you're the last stop, right?
Yes.
You can cycle that back into other supporters or clinicians to help you.
Yes. My point with all of this is have that set up ahead of time.
Right.
Yeah.
Plan for it because it's going to happen. Mm-hmm. Have a plan in place. Have those people that your peers can off gas to. As much as I said confidentiality and team members are important, and those were 1A, 1B, 1C is have the self-care plan set up.
It's almost like a part of your SOG.
It is, actually.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So it's got to be, like you're saying, is just literally put it in the plan.
Yes.
as an expected thing to happen.
Yes.
Because you change the tires and the oil in the car, don't you?
Yep.
Sometimes.
Well, maybe not you.
Well, yeah.
You should.
Not until the check engine light
Your
turns
car
on.
is having behavioral health problems. Then
I'm not as good as that as I should be.
So you bring up, you're kind of going to that roadblock area, right? So if you didn't have these plan in place, if you didn't have confidentiality, if you didn't have the right team members, those are obvious roadblocks, right? But what other roadblocks may be less obvious that could stall or stop the formation of a frontline peer support team?
Money, number one.
Yeah.
Money.
Even though the training's free,
Even though the training's free.
Yep. Yeah. Okay.
Money, number one. The other thing that we see a lot of times is maybe administration isn't on board, whether that be the city administration or your department administration.
They may not see the value in having a team at that specific agency.
Yes. Mm-hmm. But like in a previous episode, Steve was talking about was, how do you put a price on one of us? You're telling me I can't afford $2,000 for a class, but how do you put a price on an individual's life, their family life, their retirement? So when I hear dollar signs as the problem, that's a good question I like to ask. So how much is one of your employees worth?
Right. Or at least what's the cutoff?
Yes.
What's the value
Yes.
you can spend?
Because there isn't one.
Right.
There isn't one. Those are two of the biggest ones. Department culture is another one. You still have some departments out there, wherever they may be, that as a culture, they think mental health is a joke. Those are, I would say, the top three roadblocks that I run into. But the other one is, well, we just don't know what to do.
Right.
You know,
I don't feel supported, or like they just don't know where to start.
Yes. Or they want to start a peer team. They got a good thing, but it's like they're standing at the bottom of that mountain looking up and going, I don't know how I'm going to make the summit.
Right.
I don't know what steps to take. And really, that's kind of where we all come in with Frontline Strong and peer support teams. We'll come in. We'll slide the roadmap across. These are the steps you take. This is how you do it. We're here for you. We'll walk you through it. We'll get you to the summit. We've been there to summit. You know, we took the bad path here. We took a wrong path here, but this is the good one. And so that's where Frontline Strong comes in, is we come in with all this stuff. We'll come in with how to start your team, how to pick the people, how to write your SOG, whatever it might be. From start to finish, we got you covered. Here's how you do it. We're there with you, and we're a resource for it.
Manisha, as we conclude, what do you have to say to those departments who are considering or are trying to ramp up a peer support team?
So I guess I would say to these departments, really think about the cost to your members, what it would cost your members in the long run to not have a peer support team. And that is a team that encompasses your CISM and your peer support work. How much are your members already paying for this? You know, how much is your department paying for this? How many people have you lost in this last year because of the work that we're putting on them, right? So, you know, I hear a lot of costs about trainings and these other things, but the cost of losing people and the cost of the ongoing stress and trauma that our first responders are going through and not getting support is far vast than a few dollars for this program or reaching out for free resources. So I would think about that. I would think about the individuals before you make a real decision.
I'd like to talk to the people who might want to do peer support. The one thing I'll say to them is getting into it and doing it now for a couple years. At times it's time consuming, and yes, you're taking on other people's stuff and it's stressful. But when you give somebody back their life, especially somebody that you work with or in the first responder community, there's nothing more rewarding. We do it for free. It's volunteer at our place. You couldn't pay me money to do it because there's no amount of cash. When you see somebody retire and live a full life after knowing that what your team did gave them back their life, it's the most rewarding job I've ever held. It's more rewarding than the fire service in itself. I've probably saved more lives doing peer support than I ever did in the fire service. So if you're thinking about doing it, do it, because it'll pay you back tenfold.
Well, thank you for what you do, bro.
I love it.
You guys are awesome. Thanks.
Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for coming on, Manisha. Thanks, Geoff.
New studio, huh?
Love it.
So
Love it.
amazing.
Right? Johnny the engineer.
amazing.
Shout out to Johnny.
Shout out to Johnny.
Thank you, Manisha, for joining us in the Minds on the Frontline podcast. We hope everyone enjoyed this episode. We have more great content coming out soon. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.